Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Sis's Corner. And tonight I have the absolute pleasure of sitting with one of my oldest and dearest friends and the current owner of one of the most iconic businesses in North Jersey history and New Jersey history altogether, Anthony Violante, currently now the owner of Violante & Son, now located in Cedar Grove, formerly of Belleville. Anthony, thank you so very much for your time. Cheers, salute, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you.
It is a pleasure to be here. And, you know, you've just closed up another busy Saturday at your new location here in Cedar Grove, 452 Pompton Avenue in Cedar Grove. And now you've been here now, how long has it been? About 6-7 months?
No, it's actually closer to 9 months now.
Closer to 9 months, my goodness, how time flies.
It certainly does.
Almost a year already.
Yeah.
And you've been through a lot in this past 9 months, needless to say. And
it's been an interesting couple of months, to say the least.
Needless to say, no question about it. And of course, you know, your father started this great business, and it originated in the Silver Lake section of Belleville, the neighborhood, of course, that I, you know, grew up from the age of 10, where my mother still resides, and I call it Belleville's most iconic neighborhood. There's no without question, and you know, that's where it all began. And let's start with the history of this great business that your father built and that you are now carrying the torch. How did it all begin?
Oh, well, I mean, my dad started as a butcher in Europe, actually. He started when he was in, I guess they call it secondary school, it'd be the equivalent of our middle school.
Okay.
And, you know, we came over to this country in the early 60s, 1964. You know, he worked after school in different meat markets in the area. In fact, his first full-time job was in Esposito Iovino's meat market in Belleville, the other side of town.
Yes, I remember. Yep.
And he worked a couple different places. You know, he worked at the supermarket for a very short period of time. It was always small businesses, but roughly in 1982, it was August of '82, he had an opportunity to buy the old Silvestrio's meat market in Silver Lake. And it's funny because when he came from Europe, he moved right on Magnolia Street. So he opened his business a block and a quarter away from his first home in this country.
Can't beat that commute.
Can't at all. But yeah, he opened up 1982, took over Silvestrio's, changed the name, and then over the course of the next, you know, few years, he made it his own. You know, I started with him shortly thereafter after school. You know, you pop in after school, sweep up, clean up. If you wanted to see him, that's where he was. The hours he worked were obscene.
And needless to say,
yeah,
workaholic type hours, right?
Oh yeah, but that's how he's happiest. The man does not know how to sit still.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You know,
No,
that's clearly what's, you know, what makes him tick, what keeps him active, what keeps him going, and you know, and God bless your father, you know, the great Rico Violante, and you know, I've had the pleasure of knowing you and your family, you know, since you and I were basically toddlers.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, my family has been, you know, customers of your family's business, you know, for over 30 years. You guys are approaching 40 years in business. Oh, I mean, unbelievable. You mentioned about you starting, you know, coming in after school, and roughly how old were you when you first started with working for your dad in the business?
I'm going to say I was 9 or 10.
Wow.
I mean, I was in grammar school. I remember I was at the number 5 school in Belleville. My mother would pick me up after school, drive across town back to Silver Lake, and that's where I did my homework. That's where, you know, I could know my homework, I'd sleep up, You know, I got in trouble at number 4 at playground once in a while. You know, if I got out early.
Who didn't?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I started at a very young age, and then by the time I was 12, you know, I was working deli slicers. I was, you know, I was part of the crew. I was part of the Saturday work crew.
There you go.
You know, 12, 13, and you know, I always took great pride in the ability to hang with all those older guys. And there was a, you know, anybody from the West Essex area, back in the 80s, there was a meat market up here, Gellinella's.
Yep, I recall.
Tom Gellinella, you know, it was his meat market. When he retired, he came to work with us. And I remember he pulled me aside one Saturday and said how impressed he was that I was able to keep the pace with the rest of the crew. I must have been about 14 years old. And I relished in that. I'm like, you know, the fact that I could hang with these guys that I looked up to. I mean, my dad, for example, would get up at 3:34 in the morning. Would go into the, you know, down to the meat district in Manhattan to pick up product, and be back at the store by 7. Work
God
till
bless
6
you.
o'clock,
Ooh.
clean up, work at almost 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then was back at it the next morning. I mean, you know, that was my role model growing up. So, you know, people say about the hours we work now and how hard we work now, and I don't laugh at it because I'm very proud to be able to do that. But compared to what I saw growing up, I mean, I saw guys on their feet 18 hours a day, and they'd make a joke and then, you know, go home and have a beer and like it was nothing. It's just how I grew up.
And, you know, and speaking of that, you know, your dad's influence obviously on you, and you kind of already started to touch upon that. Tremendous, you know, work ethic, diligent as can be. I mean, I think when you look up the word diligent in the dictionary, a picture of your father definitely should be right next to it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And not only his influence, but the influence of these other guys that you collaborated with, you know, starting from that young age forward. And needless to say, it became second nature. But talk a little bit more, if you would, about, you know, your dad's influence on you as you continue to grow up in this incredible business.
You know, I don't know where to start, honestly. It's he's one of the most hardworking, obviously, but also one of the most intelligent, business savvy men I've ever known. He doesn't give himself enough credit that way, but, you know, whether it was how to make a deal when you're buying product, you know, procurement's a big part of his business. You know, during COVID, I was able to get product when a lot of places weren't. We're limiting your supply. You know, that's an art, and that's one of the things I learned from him. You know, how to manage the business, how to manage people, how to manage conflict, actually. I mean, you know, people are great. I mean, I've been very fortunate. We've got a customer base, you know, I mean, like your family, for example.
Yeah.
You know, since we were kids, your mother would come into my store every Saturday morning as a fixture. But, you know, people aren't always happy. You know, with
Human nature.
Get made.
Yeah.
Mistakes get made. How do you handle that? How do you do that diplomatically?
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, but I mean, but I really think there's a skill set that goes unnoticed when you can kind of put those fires out, you know, and keep everybody happy at the end of the day. And you know, I mean, I don't think I would manage the business the way I do today without his influence. And don't get me wrong, I've made changes. I've kind of made it my own at this point. But you know, like I said, for the way I deal with people, the way I deal with product, and of course, you know, I learned how to cut. I learned about cuts. I learned about what cooks how, and you know, all that from him growing up.
That's incredible. And I mean, you know, to have that influence, you know, and to see where it's taken you, you know, to this height already, and I'm sure it's going to continue to rise to many more heights.
That's the God's ears.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Belleville years and some of the special moments and stories that you can tell from working for your dad there, the building up of the business, growing up in the business. And I'm sure you probably have a million stories, but maybe you could share a couple moments or a couple stories from those, you know, those years and what you encountered, what you saw, etc.
Yeah, well, I mean, what didn't we see? You're talking, you know,
Exactly.
You know the neighborhood as well as I do. I mean, the cast of people that came through our doors. I mean, and we're blessed, honestly. You know, we're extraordinarily lucky to be able to be in business that long. You know, you're talking about guys like Tony Imperiale coming from North Newark.
Yes.
You know, you're talking about, I remember seeing small families with young kids that went straight up through, you know, when they got married. iconic moments. I was on my way to work when the plane struck the Twin Towers on September 11th. I remember coming down Bloomfield Avenue and seeing the smoke plume out of New York, and I was on my way to the store because it was a Tuesday morning, and that's where I had to be.
Yes.
Graduation weeks in Belleville. You always knew when you saw the cars driving by with the balloons and the blue and gold on it that it was graduation.
And the horns honking.
Absolutely. The feast, the St. Anthony feast. First on Heckle Street, then on Franklin Street. That was in the parking lot for a while. The droves of people coming in and out. St. Lucy's feast every year.
St. Gerard, yes.
And
let's not forget the Feast of St. Bartholomew before St. Anthony's. Before the Feast of St. Anthony's Church used to run many years ago the famous Feast of St. Bartholomew.
Yes, that was on Heckle Street.
Heckle Street for many years before it transitioned to the St. Anthony's parking lot.
Yep.
And, needless to say, that was probably that kind of really kicked off feast season, in the North Jersey area, especially in the, Belleville Newark area, because it was in August would be St. Bartholomew, and 2 months later was St. Gerard time down at St. Lucie. So, no question about that.
The neighborhood itself, the neighborhood was a lifestyle. Like you said, you'd go down, you knew who you'd see where. I could tell you what customers would come in at what time of the week.
You can imagine.
I could tell you when I saw somebody coming in, I knew if I had to get a turkey out of the back room or get a roast beef, or if I had to get a get a ribeye or a T-bone because I knew what they were going to order. And it was I'm really not a Soprano fan at all.
Okay.
But it really captured growing. I think I'm not a fan because growing up in Silver Lake, I looked at it almost as mockery because I knew people that shopped like that talked like that, that would pay respect like that. And not to the criminality, but to the personality.
Exactly.
A lot of
I know what you mean.
boisterous people coming in, and it was a one of a kind. It was. And we were lucky enough to grow up in a neighborhood that was a moment in time that I don't know if you'll ever see again anywhere else.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's a great feeling, to say the least. And now, let's talk about the eventual, transition, of course, from, Belleville to Cedar Grove, and walk me through, how did that all, come about?
Honestly, first and foremost, it was a business decision. So, as you had mentioned, Saturday was the day you'd go for bread, and you'd go to produce, you'd go to the butcher, and unfortunately, the neighborhood began to change. You moved up to North Caldwell. My parents moved up to Fairfield in the early 90s, and that was very common. Everybody, moved up the avenue, so to speak. So it went from, the neighborhood weekend stop to people making trips back to the neighborhood to do things. And so people you'd see every week, now you'd see every other week. You might just see them on a Saturday. And then, as more and more families moved out, the demographic changed. Being an Italian specialty shop, Silver Lake was, what I call Little Italy, between North Newark, that section of Bloomfield and Belleville. And as the people that liked that product moved out, it became more of an issue to come down and get it. And there are a lot of, between the addition of the light rail to Silver Lake, which increased the traffic volume, made it difficult to get to the neighborhood some days after school, after work, end of the day. The parking was very limited. We had a parking lot that we lost when they sold the property across the street.
Yes.
Now we went from having a 10, 12 space lot right across the street to on-street parking, which is very limited. As our customer base aged, that proximity became an issue.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you understand. You wouldn't want your mom walking around the corner half a block in the snow. So
Absolutely.
It became harder to get to. All those factors made it a little bit more difficult to do business in the area the way I grew up doing business. And then as my dad was talking about retirement, the store there was almost 40 years old. The last renovation, I think, was like the late 80s. The last major renovation. And I was faced with a decision. Either I was going to renovate the store or I was going to kind of take it and go somewhere else with it. With most of the customers that I grew up with were in Verona, Cedar Grove, Fairfield, A good portion went down the shore, but that wasn't an option.
Yeah.
I thought it was more prudent to move up the avenue back to the West Essex area. I knew the area, having grown up, spent going to high school in Fairfield.
Yes.
And, the opportunity presented itself for this location. And it was a long and it was a very arduous decision.
I could imagine.
Nerve-wracking.
Emotional, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the hill section. So I actually grew up on Grellock Parkway in Belleville.
Yep.
My dad, I mentioned, came to, when he landed in America, it was on Magnolia Street. But Silver Lake was the constant. When I lived in Belleville or Fairfield, after I got married, went to college, every milestone was always Silver Lake because that's where the store was.
Absolutely.
So to leave that was definitely something to think about. But ultimately I decided that if I was going to invest in a renovation, it should be a new location. And one, obviously, if you've been to the store, if anybody's been in the store, they know parking's paramount. We've got a ton of that. Accessibility right on Popton Avenue, so between Bloomfield Avenue and 46. It just seemed like a very what's the word I'm looking for? It seemed like a very advantageous move. Yeah. And, once we made a few plans, got a few plan approvals, started construction, and then it was nose to the grindstone to get it done.
And here we are today.
Yeah.
Almost 9 months, again, you at the new location. And I know it's been a heck of a challenge and a heck of an adventure since. In that transition and getting this open and, but there's no question that the parking, makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
I mean, granted, when I pass by the original location in Belleville and I see, the gates down, it's, you get an eerie feeling. It's like it's a huge void, on Franklin Street. But nonetheless, I mean, you have this great new location. You're thriving, despite some of the obstacles that you've had to face here and everything that's happened this year and so forth. And again, you're approaching almost 1 year here already, which I still can't believe. But nonetheless, now with your father having gone into retirement, I mean semi-retirement because he's helping you basically every day for the most part.
Oh, yeah. But the old store was when he decided to close, he kind of sprung it on us. We had talked about maybe getting to the holidays and trying to figure out a way to do it. And, I opened up here October 3rd, and he called me that weekend and said, I'm done next week. It was like ripping a Band-Aid off. It was just that quick. And, my cousin John Frisco worked with my dad since I think he was 13 when he started with my dad.
Yes.
And John has helped out over the years. He's been a cornerstone, honestly. Holidays.
One of the best. One of the best.
I don't know if I could have gotten through my first holidays without him, honest to God.
I could imagine.
Great
guy. Great guy.
Absolutely, one of the best.
Yep.
But when he decided to close, it was nostalgic. It was a rough day for Johnny and I especially.
I could imagine.
We grew up side by side in that store, on either side of the block from my dad. But so my dad goes to close. It was October 12th. I think it was about 7 o'clock when he walked out of the store, and unfortunately, we hit the ground running up here.
Yeah.
John had planned to go down to be there with him his last day. We were so busy. Johnny got locked in here. So John had a couple of drinks and we're reminiscing that night. And then it was 9 o'clock the next morning, and I opened up on Sundays initially, and I was by myself. I had one girl in the deli and myself at the counter Sunday mornings. I didn't know what to expect. And I had two people. I'll never forget. I had two people waiting at the counter. I see my dad's truck go by real slow, looking in the windows. Now, mind you, he closed his store 13 hours before that, and he comes busting. 2 minutes later, he comes busting through the door with an apron on. He goes, "There's people waiting. You can't handle this. I'm here to help." Slaps the table and goes, "Who's next?" I called my cousin. I dropped what I was doing. I said, "Dude, it lasted 13 hours. He's been retired 13 hours. He's back in the store."
I'm not the least bit surprised, Anthony. I'm not the least bit surprised.
Yeah.
God bless your father. I mean, I can't say that enough.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned COVID. Let's talk a little bit about that and the effect, the impact of, the COVID pandemic on your business, especially with you just a few months into the new location. I mean, you're talking about a heck of a combination of a challenge to deal with. But you guys have obviously been weathering that challenge. Take me through this crazy year of 2020, this unbelievable, unfathomable pandemic, and how it's impacted Violante and Son today, especially with you getting this new location fully off the ground?
When COVID started, my wife's birthday was March 13th. That was the day the hammer fell almost. It was like, that's when the insanity began. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
So could I.
We've gone back really to people staying home and cooking. So I went from this full service shop back to being a full service butcher. The sandwiches went away because people weren't working. People were home more, so the prepared meals weren't as paramount. But we went back to a lot of raw cuts, a lot of chicken cutlets, a lot of veal, a lot of steaks, a lot of chopped meat, a lot of burgers. And that kind of, I don't want to say, it introduced us as a butcher shop to the West Essex area. So we went initially from this little niche shop where people might have known the name. And then when, again, as I mentioned earlier, product procurement. We've been doing business for almost 40 years. When people were limiting how much meat you could get at the supermarket, or Costco was limiting one package of what your choice was, I was offering unlimited. I was able to procure product so that whatever you needed, if you came in, we were able to service it. And I think that meant a lot to people. Thank God we were able to weather the storm. My crew, my staff, my wife I couldn't do it without her for sure. Even my kids, my oldest daughter really helped us through the whole COVID. She ran our house. I have an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old. My 14-year-old, God bless her, is a great kid, but she's 14, a little challenging sometimes. And my oldest is able to handle that. My 8-year-old is a sweetheart. She was able to homeschool because my oldest was there. Adriana and Frankie both picked up the slack tremendously around our house so we could be here. I had people here, we were here 12, 14-hour days. For months on end, it was like Groundhog Day. And, my staff hung in there. My wife was a rock. My kids picked up the slack. And we got through it. We did what, we did business. And it really wasn't about profits at that point. It really, because my name's associated here, my whole lifetime has been in not this store, but in the business. I take it very personally when I can't get something done, when I can't get an order right, when someone, needs product and I can't procure it. So for me to be able to get through that and service everyone and keep the doors open and keep families fed, that was a feather in my cap, so to speak.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And I remember, reaching out to you when I needed, a couple orders, and no matter what, you've always been able to accommodate everyone. And granted, yes, there was a little bit more of a weight involved during that situation, uncontrollably and understandably. But like you said, you managed your way through it. And when you think about Violante and Son today, with what you've started to build here at the new location in Cedar Grove, sum up where things are at today and what you envision for the future of the business.
It's funny you say that. When I first opened up, my goal was to keep the doors open. I really didn't know what I was in for. After weathering COVID, we're expanding different lines. I brought a lot of gluten-free products in. We're doing a lot more pre-cut products to try to expedite the experience. People get in and get out a lot faster. I'd like to build on both of those in the sense of over the next year, I'd like to be able to get to a point where we can offer the same quality, the same service, but in a much faster fashion. To be able to sit here and focus on just streamlining our productivity and making changes that'll just make the experience more enjoyable is mind-boggling to me. I'm so thrilled and honestly so blessed to be able to say that that's my major goal right now, is just to try to fine-tune this to the point where it's the experience I want you to have when you come in.
Well, considering what you and your family have accomplished and achieved to this point, I have every confidence that you're going to achieve, that goal and any and all others to come as you well. But no, what you guys have done has been incredible. I cannot thank you enough for this opportunity. I wish you, and your family all the very best with continued success here in Cedar Grove as you continue to grow, expand, pursue further goals, and and so forth as the future progresses. And you guys are wonderful, and I wish you guys nothing but the best. Now, before we close this out, okay, you are going to be the third Cessa's Corner guest to be cessified, as I like to say. So, if you're ready, I'm going to ask you a few poignant questions. We're going to get to know the man behind Violante right now, Anthony Violante, a little bit more on a personal level. All right?
Okay, wait. Go for it.
All right, well, allow me. Talk about a loaded question to start it off. Favorite food?
Oh, steak.
I knew you were going to say that.
Hands down.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chip.
Interesting, okay. One of my favorites as well. Favorite hobby?
Hunting. But honestly, anything outdoors. Fishing, hiking. I just love to be in the woods.
Good. I knew you were going to say hunt. Knowing you as I do, I knew that was coming out. Favorite type of music?
Country. I'm torn between country and rock, oddly enough.
Okay.
My playlists are very eclectic, but yeah, if I had to pick one of the two.
All right. Excellent choice. Favorite movie? What comes to mind?
Oh, favorite movie. Well, honestly, Rocky. My wife is...
Another thing we have in common.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, my wife dreads when I find a Rocky marathon on the weekend. It stops my weekends. Dead in the water.
But at least she'll know where you're at.
Every time.
Favorite actor?
I guess I'm going to have to go with Sly.
Make it simple, right?
Absolutely.
Favorite actress?
Favorite actress? I'm going to tell you, I think I'm going to have to go with, I think Meryl Streep.
Well, excellent choice. Definitely one of the best in the business, no question. Favorite TV show?
Oh, Sons of Anarchy.
Okay.
Sons of Anarchy.
And what would you say favorite place to travel to?
As much as I love the mountains, I have a soft spot in my heart for the Jersey Shore.
Who doesn't?
I mean, obviously, if you grew up in North Jersey, it's not summer until my feet are in the sand. So,
I couldn't agree with you more. Again, Anthony, I tell you, this has been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so very much for this opportunity.
No, Anthony, thank you. It's really been a pleasure to speak with you, and it's been humbling. Your introduction is it's a lot to live up to.
Again, it's my pleasure, and I thank you so very much for this opportunity. Folks, once again, Anthony Violante, current owner of Violante & Son, following in his great father's footsteps. Violante & Son, currently located 452 Pompton Avenue in Cedar Grove, as he says, up the avenue, off Bloomfield Avenue, Pompton Avenue, 452, right here in Cedar Grove. And again, they do it all here, meats, cold cuts, sandwiches, salads, specialty items galore, you name it, they do it here at Violante & Son. You check them out on Facebook as well.
October 3rd will be our 1-year anniversary up here. It's a Saturday afternoon.
Mark your calendars, October 3rd.
I've got a few little things planned. We're going to do free sausage and pepper sandwiches. I'm bringing a local ice cream vendor, an ice cream truck. For anybody that comes in, customers or not, we're going to try to come up with a few more ideas to kind of celebrate 1 year in a new location, the end of getting through the pandemic and the craziness that it's been. Just kind of a little celebration. So if anybody is so inclined, whether you're shopping or not, just come by, grab a sandwich, say hello. I'd love to talk to everybody.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Once again, folks, you heard him. October 3rd, the 1-year anniversary of the opening of Violante & Son here in Cedar Grove. Once again, 452 Pompton Avenue. Anthony, once again, all the best to you and your family. Cheers.
Cheers.
Salute. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this special edition of Cessa's Corner. Once again, if you have not already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel under Anthony M. Cessa, where you can enjoy this episode of Cessa's Corner, as well as all of the prior editions and all of the upcoming episodes to come. I thank you all very much for your ongoing support. And again, Anthony, cheers once again.
Cheers, buddy.
To Violante and to Anthony and his family.
Thank you very much.
Salute.
Chin down.